Who makes so many? What a sensational catch! Are you kidding me? Wow! Oh, it's a dunk from Julio Rodriguez! Good again for Hoskins! Second three-run homer of the afternoon. Streaking out of here. Two-run home run, Ronald Acuna, first pitch. Springer hits another one to deep center. And Springer has done it again. An exclamation point. The first Major League home run for the rookie backstop. Cole Young in his Major League debut. He has won it for the Mariners. Has he got another? You bet he has. Aaron Judge.
Bunted in front of the plate. Fisk is going to go to second. The throw is in time. Fine throw by Carlton Fisk. Gets Pete Rose, who is head first sliding into second. A lot of people have talked about two of the fine catches in baseball in this series. We've seen Johnny Bench's arm. Take a look at Carlton Fisk. A bullet to second and a big play, getting the lead runner, Pete Rose. Carlton Fisk.
There are two kinds of people in this world. Those who love Old Bay and those who've never tried it. Because once you taste this Chesapeake Bay seasoning, you'll immediately be turned into a canvert. Old Bay goes great on seafood, chicken, corn on the cob, french fries, pretty much anything. Join the Legion of Canverts in America. Pick up a can today. And before you know it, this could be you. Old Bay, the can that connects us.
There it goes, a long drive. If it stays fair, home run. We will have a seventh game in this 1975 World Series. Carlton Fisk becomes the first player in the series to hit one over the wall into the net. Red Sox win it 7-6 in 12 innings. And Carlton Fisk had a lot of little boy in him right there, Joe.
He took one step, knew it was going to be close, he knew it was gone, and it was dancing in the streets all the way around. Johnny Pesky greets him at first base, and he is dancing.
A lot of body English for Carlton Fisk. Watch it.
How many steps does he take? One. He waits to see it. Get over, get over.
He knew it. There it is. The next 2-2. Davis to left and will hit. Oh my! It's gone! Santa Maria!
From high atop the Robinson Gearing Studio Complex and straight out of God's country, Pawleys Island, South Carolina, the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network proudly presents Backwards K-Pod. And now, here's the host of the show, Jake Robinson.
I never move with slow-mo. Welcome to my dojo. Those other pods are so-so. I'm chill like bro, yo. Focus like a GoPro. Ripping up this promo. Check out the scoreboard. Bricks, I'm knowing no. No, it's going. Yo, it's going. Your heart just stop. Your day got strong and mighty. Undefeated, I mean it. Pull up the pod, scroll it down, then read it. Written, produced, directed, and mixed. Tongue on your lips and eyes and spit backflips. Think a tip, any tip, get onto it. I got ridiculous pods without busting it. You sit at home crying like the girl while I spread the gospel around the world. Yo, the pods are written behind tracks that mixed in smooth with the grooves to make ears wanna listen. Add a little gut and the rhythm to back it up. Another show to my name, now watch me stack them up. You think another like rap back, but this ain't no ad cat. For hobbies to rhyme, some people trying to be black for that. About time I come out, call the show BKP, now let me turn it out. Yo, name take the same quarter 71. Date, you know what time it is, abandoned gun. Your experience, I've been a witness to glory, and that's why I collect ball players and their stories. You heard? So, once again, back is the incredible, the pod animal, Jake the Snake Robinson from the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network. I'm coming out of Pawleys Island, South Kakalaki. Have podcast machine back in the Captain Kirk chair, shields down, photons up. Prepare to engage on this week's digital audio program that I call Backwards K-Pod, where we collect ball players and their stories. What's cracking, Seaman's? What's juicy? Welcome back into the dojo for chapter 177 of the historical, biological, and anthological accounting of the players, characters, moments, managers, stadiums, and all the pop culture references that have molded our perspective and shaped our knowledge of this beautiful tapestry of life we call baseball. I'm Jake Robinson. I got your hookup. Holler if you hear me. I'm joined, as usual, in the dojo today with my compadre of chaos, the Venusly Polonius beeline of ferocity, the chocolate tabby of tenaciousness, my little soldier gunner, chewing on catnip gummies, posting up in the conductor's booth of our BKP time travel choo-choo, awaiting orders to take us on our way to this week's baseball adventure. I got a backstory and a 24-year Major League career to offer up this week, and we got more ground to cover than Roberto Clemente out in Ford Field. So I'd like to get all of you stragglers hanging out on the Terrapin Station platform to kiss and hug your loved ones goodbye, climb aboard our modern marvel of science and engineering so we can be on our way. As I look to the west of Terrapin, I can see right into our beautifully manicured Jewel Box Stadium down the left field line as it disappears at the home plate area. Our senses are filled with the sights and smells and sounds of a packed house as the hometown BKP9 have come storming out of the dugout and taken the field for tonight's contest. Our starting pitcher has completed his warm-up tosses. The catcher has gone down to second with impeccable footwork and an absolute seed on the bag. The infielder is now throwing that rock around the diamond with a little snap and swagger. And the home plate umpire has cleaned up the plate and said those two words that send shivers up my spine in anticipation of the game: play ball. As his team's visiting leadoff stick approaches the dish to get this game started, that's my cue, as usual, to finalize our prep for departure. I'm calling all aboard, as I will have my boy Gunner set our time and destination this week for Bellows Falls, Vermont, December 26, 1947, for the birth of one of the greatest catchers to ever don the tools of ignorance, the incomparable and legendary Carlton Fisk. So, hurry, step right up, get in where you fit in, climb aboard our BKP time travel choo-choo, and make yourself at home for the trip to picturesque New England in the winter of 1947, the day after Christmas. You can post up in our expansive lounges or nestle yourself into one of our private boxcars with a trip. Take off your shoes, kick up your feet, open your kimonos, and get yourself comfortable. Mikasa is Tsukasa, as Gunner has us reaching the necessary quantum speeds needed to bend baseball space and time, hitting 6.0 gigahertz of RF on our spectrum analyzer, creating vast anomalous traversable wormholes, blurring the realms of time and dimension, tilting the celestial scales in our favor, all in an effort to take us back to the beginning of this icon's baseball journey. And this week's topic is as much about the great Carlton Fisk as it is about the catcher's position as a whole. The most demanding position to play on the diamond, as only Alon Rodriguez has suited up for more Major League games at that position. Catchers, they're a rare breed. They're usually the toughest and smartest players on the field. It takes grit, determination, and testicular fortitude to strap on the gear, block short hops around the plate, stare down players burning the way around third base, steamrolling down the line in the never-ending battle for supremacy of home plate. All the while the catcher is exposed and awaiting that throw to the plate from an outfielder. It takes brains and high baseball intelligence as the only player on the diamond who defensively has a view of the entire field, constantly consuming and gathering data, and with all that information, he becomes ostensibly the liaison between team and manager. Now, before the 1970s, this was the mold for the everyday catcher that majors. You had your greats like Mickey Cochran, Bill Dickey, Roy Campanella, Yogi Berra, and those guys, they were game changers. But for the most part, catchers were usually short and stocky, tough guys who served as on-field managers in a lot of ways. But the 70s saw the next step in the evolutionary process of the Major League catcher with guys like Gary Carter, Ted Simmons, Thurman Munson, Lance Parrish, Johnny Bench, and Carlton leading the charge in the changing of the guard. These new era catchers were now bona fide professional athletes who not only assumed the leadership responsibilities of the job defensively, but now were impacting games with their powerful sticks. And Fisk played the position with a 1930s and 1940s mindset of dirty uniforms and an in-your-face intensity towards not only the day's opposition, who he was intent on destroying, as well as every teammate on the roster he would lead into battle. He wasn't there to make friends. He was singularly focused on winning ball games. And unlike the predecessors of his position, he was long, lean, athletically muscular, and I can remember thinking as a kid, man, this guy has like the greatest posture I've ever seen anybody have in life. He stood tall, walked tall, and there was an air of arrogance about him in just the way he moved and that sourpuss resting face he held behind his mask. Brooks Robinson, Hall of Fame third baseman for the Baltimore Orioles, once said that Carlton always carried himself like he was the boss and he was the guy in charge. He had an incredible knack of slowing the game down. Games that he caught were usually longer than the average game time of games in that era. White Sox teammate Tom Pachort once said, "Old Carlton was slow. And it was so slow that it took an hour to order breakfast and another hour just to eat it." And Carlton loved to just dictate the pace of the game to ensure that all his chess pieces were in their proper position and to make sure that he and his shooter of the day were on the same page. He would make countless trips to the mound during a game to coax the maximum effort and production out of his pitcher, and he wouldn't leave until the home plate umpire chased him back to his position behind the dish. Sometimes this was to the consternation of the day's pitcher. He and teammate Bill Spaceman Lee, they had some classic confrontations high atop the bump in those close games, and it would usually start with Fisk asking for timeout, and then slowly with this perfect arrogant posture walking to the mound, and with the mercurial southpaw shouting at Fisk to get his ass back behind the plate. Fisk would ignore his pleas, and Spaceman's hand gestures and it would push through with his thoughts of the moment. Then you probably see Spaceman turn his back on Fisk and stare out at the triangle in the Fenway Park outfield. All the while, the two would be going round and round in a circle on the mound as Fisk is trying to establish eye contact. But all he's getting really is the back of Spaceman's head. The meeting of the minds would usually end when the umpire came from behind the plate, walked to the mound, and finally Spaceman would turn around, look at Carlton, and say, yeah, I got you. Now get back behind the plate. I fucking hear you. The umpire would probably say something like, all right, boys, let's break it up out here. And Fisk would turn around and slowly walk back to his position with his perfect posture before assuming the crouch. About his competitive teammate, Spaceman once said he was amazingly slow and tenacious, but he also had the personality of a dead carp laying on the bottom of the Connecticut River. And, man, I love the Spaceman. I mean, he's a quote a minute. I have a sit-down one-on-one interview with Bill Lee that goes on for over an hour on the Backwards K-Pod YouTube channel. If you've never heard this interview, I highly suggest you check it out, as he is one of the most engaging, opinionated athletes of the 20th century. But I digress. Now, I've told you before that the battle between pitcher and batter is a complex struggle for ownership of home plate between the two combatants. But Roy Smalley, former shortstop for the Twins and Yankees, recalls that facing the pitcher with Carlton behind the dish was really a struggle between he and Fisk, and that no catcher in all of his years of playing the game ever made him feel those dynamics. He was a proud warrior, a product of his childhood environment, embodying traditional New England values like pride, ruggedness, and individuality, and he always believed that as a catcher, he is also a part of the pitching staff. His commitment to profession and high standards were never more displayed than 1997, when Red Sox PR director Dick Bresciani had the words, "Fisk was a native of Vermont," inscribed on his plaque to be hung in the Red Sox Hall of Fame. But while Fisk is unquestionably the greatest player ever born in the Green Mountain State, he doesn't really consider himself a Vermonter. Fisk grew up on the other side of the Connecticut River in tiny Charlestown, New Hampshire, and by his accounts, next to a road where you looked left or right, you could see everything that was coming and going in your life. It was a town with a population of around 1,000 living people, and there were 4 generations of the Fisk family that lived within a mile radius of one another, and the nearest hospital was in Bellows Falls, Vermont, which is where he was born. So, in its display of his high standards and his traditional New England stubbornness that's ingrained in his DNA, Carlton insists that the plaque be recast at a cost of $3,000 to the Sox and have the proper information added to the plaque. And speaking of childhood environment, here we are, freaks, as Gunner has us tearing through that last traversable wormhole and straight into Bellows Falls, Vermont, December 26, 1947, where our story this week begins with the birth of Carlton Ernest Fisk. It would be his father's extraordinary work ethic that he would inherit, but the athleticism handed down to him, it really comes from both of his parents. Cecil was an engineer in the tool and die industry in Springfield, Vermont, but his second vocation was running the family farm. Often he would dismount his tractor after working the fields, race to the local tennis club, whoop up on an opponent, then return to the farm and finish his duties. In addition to playing tennis, Cecil was a superb basketball player. Now, his mother, Leona, was an exceptional athlete as well, excelling in softball and tennis, and as a champion bowler. It was understood in the family that everyone put in at least 4 hours of farming chores a day. So not only did the gene for hand-eye coordination and competitiveness pass on to Leona and Cecil's offsprings, so does the incredible blue-collar work ethic that Carlton would become known for. Now, the Fisk of Charlestown, New Hampshire, represented an almost athletic dynasty before Carlton was even born. Carlton's older brother, Calvin, his younger brothers, Conrad and Cedric, as well as his sisters, Janet and June, all exhibited unusual athletic prowess. In fact, the son who was destined for the Hall of Fame was not considered the most athletically gifted of the siblings. And Bill Lee used to marvel at the size of Carlton's brothers, saying these guys can change horseshoes on a Clydesdale with one hand. Now, Carlton, for his part, was a chubby kid, and the family begins calling him Pudge or Pudgy when he's around 3 years old. His high school coach, Ralph Sylvia, remembers that if you saw him in the 8th grade, you would never believe that he would go on to accomplish all the things that he did. The one thing Sylvia remembers that Carlton had going for him, he was a naturally farm boy strong, and the coach begins honing Carlton's strength by implementing weight training for the boys, long before it became commonplace for baseball players. Beginning in 1962, when Carlton and Conrad began playing Charlestown high school sports together, and continued through the 1972 year when June graduated from the newly regionalized Fall Mountain School District, the Fisk family could be counted on to lead their school teams to annual playoff appearances. Along with Conrad and his younger brother Cecil, Carlton and his brothers were the nucleus of a dominant Charlestown presence in basketball first, and then baseball and soccer as well, after they were introduced as scholastic sports in Charlestown. Carlton's first love as a kid is basketball, and he has hoop dreams of one day playing power forward for the Boston Celtics on the parquet floor of the famous Boston Gardens. Coach Sylvia is convinced that Carlton had what it took to play in the NBA back in the day, lauding his ferocious toughness, but Fisk is less optimistic, saying, you don't see any 6'3" power forwards in the association. Carlton would develop his hoop talents, shooting at a barn that hung at his grandfather's barn, and he would have some legendary high school performances. In a 1963 regional playoff game at the Boston Gardens, he made such an impression in a victory over a team from Winooski, Vermont, that Walter Brown, the owner of the Celtics, asked a local reporter, who the hell is this kid? In 1965, playing against Hopkinton and the New Hampshire Class M semifinals, the 6'2" Fisk explodes for 42 points while ripping down 38 boards against a front court opposition that featured players who were 6'10", 6'8", and 6'3". And with little more than a minute left on the clock, Fisk fouls out of the game and receives a standing ovation, but the team would lose by 2 points. Now, Carlton, expecting to hear praises from his father after the game, was stunned into silence when Cecil begins harping on his son's 4 missed free throws in a tight 2-point loss. And if you make three of those throws, then you win, son. And Cecil loved all of his children, but he had high, lofty standards. He wasn't trying to be harsh or overbearing, but he was a firm believer that To truly excel in athletics, mental toughness was essential. His philosophy on child rearing was straightforward and relatively simple. I expected them to do as well as they could at whatever they did. And even though he had these high, incredible standards, he expected his children to pursue. And he and Leona, they could be found every game sitting behind their son's bench, quietly taking in the action, never saying a word to Coach Sylvia, never criticizing the coach's strategy or their son's playing time. Pudge's baseball experience begins in the cornfields of his family farm. Learning the game together, he and his athletic brothers would play for hours as time and chores permitted. The long and cold northern New England winters reduced Carlton's high school baseball career, really permitting no more than 17 games in the season. In fact, the team's early season practices often began with Carlton and his teammates shoveling snow off the Charlestown High School baseball field, which was shaded from the direct sunlight. Now, sometimes the team would simply move practice to the nearby Fisk cornfields, where the coach, Leona, and Cecil would let the boys practice as long as they wanted. And even as a teenager, Carlton would display the tenacity and fire that he would become known for, and he demanded that practices be taken seriously to mimic game-like conditions, and on one occasion, he throws hands at a teammate for goofing off during practice. And he had never played the catcher position in his life, but the competitive nature of those practices would lead him to the road of his baseball destiny. During batting practice one day, Carlton is manning the hot corner, and his brother Calvin was behind the dish. One of their teammates hits a high pop fly at foul grounds that both brothers chase after. And from the dugout bench, Silver yells, "Fisk, Fisk," not realizing in the moment he has two guys named Fisk on the team. Hearing their names, both brothers bolt to the spot where the ball is going to fall, and they collide. Calvin gets the worst of the collision as his head smashes into his bigger younger brother. Calvin's face immediately turns tomato red with blood as he loses two of his teeth in the collision. And in true Fisk fashion, because the catcher's mask wouldn't fit over Calvin's swollen jaw, Carlton takes over the catcher's duties in the practice, and the next day in the game with Calvin in a smashed face playing left field. Carlton, Conrad, and Calvin all pitched for Charlestown High, and they go 48-17, including playoff games during Pudge's tenure there. One of those losses comes in a Class M state championship game against a strong Woodsville team. Despite striking out 14 batters in the contest, Carlton becomes a victim of his own aggression. With one out and the winning run on third base, the Woodsville batter lays down a perfect bunt down the third base line. Not hearing his teammates' urgent pleas to let the ball go foul, Fisk instinctually leaps off the bump, retrieves the ball, throws across his body to nail the batter, busting it down the first base line as the winning run crosses home plate from third. Now, because of the short high school baseball season in New England, American Legion baseball takes on a special importance in the region. Carlton plays for the Claremont Post in his first year of eligibility, but in 1965, he switches to the Bellows Falls Post number 5, coached by Tom Ryan, and the exploits of Fisk are beginning to circulate throughout the region. In one game, Carlton is in the box behind the count 0-2 after looking badly flailing on 2 curveballs, and the catcher throws down the pointer looking for the heat to put Carlton away. The pitcher emphatically shakes off the catcher twice, and the manager and catcher call timeout, walk to the mound. When the two get to the mound, the pitcher tells him to Look, I'm not throwing that kid a fastball. Use your fucking head. But the manager wins out over the young pitcher when he tells him to throw what the catcher calls before being chased back to the dugout by the home plate umpire. The catcher gets down in a squat, calls for the fastball. The pitcher, knowing this is a bad idea, rears back and lets the pitch fly. As the pitch enters the hitting zone, he knows this is a mistake. Fisk identifies the pitch, smacks it over the center field fence for the home run. Another legendary home run up his bat clears 2 sets of outfield fences and for years was marked by a simple white sign that had an X on it. Even though his amateur career had less than 100 games to his credit, Fisk is able to grab the attention of professional scouts who are mixed in their analysis of the young Pudge. One scout tells Coach Ryan that his bat speed is subpar and his late bat only has the power to right field, which Ryan snaps back. Well, he'll have better coaches in the minors who will teach him how to pull the ball. His all-around athletic prowess earns him Charlestown High School's most valuable player in soccer, hoops, and baseball, and is offered a basketball scholarship to the University of New Hampshire that he accepts. The decision to attend UNH is made easier by his brother Calvin's enrollment in the school, where he is the captain of the soccer team and an all-Yankee conference sweeper. But soon after Carlton becomes enrolled, Calvin is drafted by both the Baltimore Orioles and the United States military, who is embroiled in conflict in Southeast Asia. Calvin is 25 years old when he returns home from Vietnam War, and the Orioles now consider him too old to embark on a realistic career of professional baseball. Conrad Fisk, whom everyone conceded was the most gifted sibling on the mound, later signs with the Montreal Expos. Connie had immense talent. He went undefeated in high school, threw a no-hitter in the playoffs during his senior year, but an arm injury ends his career prematurely. Cedric had the higher scholastic batting average than all his older brothers, but he doesn't pursue professional athletics beyond high school. During the winter of 1965 and 66, Carlton leads the University of New Hampshire freshman basketball team to an undefeated season, and he meets his future wife Linda Faust, a native of Manchester, New Hampshire. In January of 1967, Fisk is drafted in the first round, number 4 overall by the Boston Red Sox in the amateur draft, and many Sox fans and the region, they believe that Fisk was basically drafted as a token New Englander to pacify the base. Fisk, on the other hand, is overjoyed to be taken by his home team, and he sees the writing on the wall for his NBA aspirations. He's shipped out to Waterloo, Iowa, Boston's entry-level team at the time, and his baseball career almost ends before it begins. Despite batting .338 with 12 home runs in 62 games, he is despondent with all the losing the team is absorbing, as revealed in letters home at the time. The Waterloo Hawks finished the year 53-60, 14 games behind the Cedar Rapids Cardinals, and Pudge is having a hard time dealing with the mounting losses. For Fisk, competition is a personal combat, and winning is the only source of individual inspiration and satisfaction. Losing is utterly unacceptable, intolerable, and, well, humiliating. But Fisk hangs in there, and in September of 1969, the Red Sox call him up to the show from Double-A Pittsfield. The 21-year-old Fisk makes his Major League debut in the first game of the doubleheader versus the Orioles on September 18th. His cup of coffee turns bitter and cold when he goes over 5 in the two games with 2 strikeouts. And Red Sox shortstop Rico Petrocelli remembers seeing Fisk for the first time and thinking, there's no way this kid is ever going to make it in the majors. He has trouble fielding his position, and he's got a really slow bat. And the local media, their narrative is that Fisk needs at least a year in AAA to own the nuances of the game. He spends the 1970 season playing for AA Pawtucket and the 1971 season with AAA Louisville, and he remains upbeat and continues to develop his game. At AAA, he serves under skipper Darrell Johnson, whom Carlton would credit in his Hall of Fame induction speech for turning him in to a major league catcher. Johnson was a former catcher himself. He teaches Pudge how to be a leader and field general on the diamond. Playing with abandon, all-out aggressiveness was never a weak point in Carlton's game, but Johnson teaches the kid how to channel his fire intelligently. He teaches a young prodigy all the important facets of the catcher's position, the things that help pitchers in various ways, the little facets of leadership that not only elevate your play, but also your teammates as well. And he also spends countless hours with Pudge in the cage to improve his stick. And Fisk will often say, when I put the gear on, my job is defense, to get the other team out, help my pitchers get after hitters, help my infielders with the positioning, run the game. But once I take off my equipment, my mindset changes. I stop thinking defense and go on the offense. The new concentration and dedication to his studies results in a .263 average at Louisville, which was 34 points higher than his average year before at AA Pawtucket. He gets into 14 games for the big club Red Sox team in a September 1971 call-up, and he plays well. He compiles a .313 batting average with 2 home runs. He wins a roster spot in spring training 1972, but he finds himself third on the depth chart for Red Sox catchers. The starting catcher for the Red Sox was Dwayne Josephson, who had batted .245 with 10 home runs in 1971 after Boston had acquired the backstop from the Chicago White Sox in a trade. The backup catcher for the Sox was Bob Montgomery, but when Josephson is injured in the third game of the 1972 season, Fisk is inserted into the starting lineup. From the outset, Fisk establishes his star quality bag. By June 13th, the 24-year-old rookie had collected 32 hits, 24 extra bases. His average was .278, his slug was .574. His confidence and slugging percentages continued to rise throughout the summer, and by July 12th, it stands at .629, and he is beginning to get a rep from the American League pitchers. Now, many of the scribes began calling him the Johnny Bench of the American League, and in July, Orioles manager Earl Weaver selects the rookie for his first All-Star appearance. He would replace Tigers catcher Phil Freehand in the 6th inning of the Fall Classic, and suddenly he finds himself playing against the Hank Aaron's and the Willie Mays of the baseball universe, guys whose baseball cards he had admired as a kid a few years back in Charlestown, New Hampshire. For the 1972 rookie campaign, Fisk plays in 131 games. He scores 74 times, drives in 61, finishes with a .293, 375, 38 slash, and 22 dongs. The season earns him a 4th-place finish in the AL MVP voting and a unanimous vote for AL Rookie of the Year. The first player to ever win the award unanimously. He also wins his first Gold Glove Award, and all in all, it's a better fucking year in the Fisk household. As a team, the 1972 Red Sox are just a half game off the pace for a pennant, and Pudge watches as his salary rises from $18,000 to $30,000, which is as big as any raise in that era for a player in the game. And To give those salary figures perspective, $18,000 in 1973 is worth around $94,000 today in 2025, and $30,000 is worth about $217,000 in the 2026 economy. Rico Petrocelli, who was skeptical about Fisk's chance to make it as a major league player, was floored by the turnaround. He saw a guy that had improved behind the dish, no longer chased curveballs, expanded the strike zone. He saw a guy that was not only prepared, but playing the catcher position like a 10-year vet. As for the Red Sox, they had been searching for a quality receiver since the Bernie Timmons, Sammy White era of the 1940s and 50s. Since those days, they had shuffled in a litany of mediocre catchers to fill the void, from guys like Bob Tillman, Joe Askew, Tom Satriani, Russ Gibson, and Mike Ryan, before finding the diamond in the rough in Carlton Fisk. And in Fisk, they had finally acquired a tough as nails, productive, intelligent, and dependable backstop with an unmatched desire to win. As the daily grind of his rookie campaign rolls on, Carlton asserts himself as a team leader and becomes vocal with his pitching teammates. He would yell encouragements to his hurlers to motivate them, and he urged them to come inside on opposing batters to push them off the plate and hopefully encourage their effectiveness. Sometimes in the face, the in-your-face intensity and swagger from Pudge would ruffle the feathers of his opponents as well as players on his own team, as he played like a man on a crusade. His pugnacious and combative style of play, it helped produce wins for the Red Sox, but it also created some skirmishes with the opposition along the way. Collisions and run-ins with players like Thurman Munson, Craig Nettles of the Yankees, Alan Gallagher of the Angels, Frank Robinson from the Orioles. It helped to create the narrative that Fisk was one of the most unpopular players in the league. Manager Eddie Calso would say if you play against him, he's easy to hate, but if you play with him and you want to win, then you're going to love him. As a fellow New Englander, there was no team he despised more than the New York Yankees, and he and Bombers catcher Thurman Munson would have one of the most, terrifying player-on-player rivalries of baseball history. But, it was a rivalry that scorched the 1970s. As Red Sox beat writer Peter Gammons once said, Carlton genuinely disliked Thurman Munson, but Munson fucking hated Fisk. And the rivalry begins on August 1st, 1973, in a Red Sox-Yankees matchup at a Fenway Park in the top of the ninth with the score dead like the two, and Munson on third, Felipe Liu on first, G. Michaels whiffs on a suicide squeeze bunt attempt, and the feisty Fisk elbows Michaels out of the way and prepares to take on Munson, who is bulldozing his way to the plate. The two Warriors collide, but Fisk hangs on to the ball for the out, and Munson continues to lie prone on top of Fisk, which allows Liu to reach second base. As Fisk goes to push Thurman off of him, Stick Michaels grabs Fisk, and Pudge throws the skinny stick and puts him on his ass. An embarrassed Michael jumps up and joins the fracas at home plate, developing between Munson and Fisk. Yankees manager Ralph Houck would recall how Fisk had his left arm across Michael's throat like a boa constrictor, literally choking him into submission, all the while he is pummeling Munson with right-hand haymakers under the pile. And Houck remembers, I had to crawl underneath the pile to pry Carlton's arm off a Stick's throat. I had no idea that Pudge was that strong. He was fucking scary. At times, Carlton's on-field intensity would get him trouble with his own clubhouse. At an autograph session in Springfield, Massachusetts, Fisk publicly criticized his team leader Carl Stremski and outfielder Reggie Smith for not hustling and failing to provide the proper leadership to a roster loaded with young, impressionable players. The public outburst prompted a typical Red Sox inter-squad war of words, with the locker rooms picking sides, and in reflection, Fisk has said he'd never been to disrespect or embarrass Yaz, but I was a young player looking to the veterans for direction and discipline. From an early age, Pudge perceived lack of hustle on the baseball field to be a blasphemous, inexcusable, and egregious way to play the game. And his comments, for the most part, directed at Yaz and Reggie Smith, they were loved by the majority of Red Sox Nation, as the feeling was that finally they had someone in the clubhouse willing to hold the team accountable. In 1973, the dreaded sophomore jinx caught up with Pudge in the second act of the second season. On June 23rd, he's hitting a torrid .303, but he hits .228 in July, .198 in August, and .186 in September. He caught 131 games with the Red Sox, who are edged out by the surging Orioles for the AL East pennant. And part of the slide in stats can be attributed to his desire to catch every game, which drains a catcher's energy and effectiveness. But his extended slump of 1973 was nothing compared to the challenges ahead of Carlton. On June 28, 1974, while facing the Cleveland Indians at Municipal Stadium, the Red Sox and the Tribe are deadlocked in a 1-1 tie with 2 outs in the bottom of the ninth when George Hendricks rips a ball in the left center field gap that hits the base of the wall. Cleveland's Laron Lee rounds third and crashes into the fully extended Fisk, who is blocking the plate and reaching for the high relay throw. The collision is horrific as Pudge's leg bends and the total wrong position. Think Joe Theismann, kind of like that, shredding the ligaments in his left knee. And many who saw the play in real time, they're convinced that Fisk is never going to catch it again, let alone maybe even play the game ever. After all, no catcher had ever recovered from a reconstructive knee surgery to once again don the tools of ignorance. And Fisk remembers how he was doomed to walk with a limp and suffer from chronic back problems throughout his life because of the injury. While Fisk retreats to his New Hampshire home during the off-season, and he has very little communication with the Red Sox brass or his teammates, and he begins the long rehab process of mending his bruised body and ego, intent on proving the naysayers wrong. The long hours during the all-season spent in rehab made a lasting impression on the player. First of all, he promised that he would never again block the plate, a promise that he kept throughout his playing career as he became the master of the swipe tag on incoming runners. And secondly, he felt like, in some sick and morbid ways, the injury was a blessing from the baseball gods. From that all-season on, he identified the importance of being in top physical condition and using the off-season to properly prepare for the rigors of playing catcher in Major League Baseball. Before the knee injury, winter was just a time to have fun and play basketball, and after the injury, he becomes obsessed with also off-season conditioning, and is what he feels is the secret to his 22 years of durability. Of course, playing the catcher's position is going to be beset by injuries, and Fisk would spend nearly 5.5 years of his career on the disabled list when all is added up. But look, he always managed to return, catching a total of 2,226 games in his career, which was the most until Ivan Rodriguez topped the mark in 2009. And more than all the home runs he swatted in his career and all the impressive stats, Pudge is defined by his longevity. And it all started with his dedication to conditioning after the gruesome knee injury that really should have ended his career behind the dish. Injuries also gave Pudge a whole new perspective And he comes to admire guys like Jerry Remy, Rick Burleson, and Mike Flanagan, dudes who face serious career-ending injuries only to battle back. And he also came to respect the guys who may not have had an overwhelming abundance of talent in their arsenal, but made themselves successful through the pain and hard work. After a successful self-exile in the offseason, he returns to the Red Sox spring training ready to go. Unfortunately, his return from the 1974 knee surgery is further delayed when he's hit by a pitch in a spring training game, shattering the bones in his forearm. He is put on the shelf for the first 2.5 months of the 1975 season, returning to a standing ovation on June 23rd. He comes out white hot, hits .331 over the course of the remaining season, leading the Red Sox to the American League East flag. The Red Sox would take on the defending three-peat world champion Oakland A's in the ALCS. Pudge stays hot. He hits .417 in a series against Oakland pitchers as Boston sweeps Oakland 3-0, ending their dynastic run and sending the Red Sox to the World Series battle against the Cincinnati Reds and the Big Red Machine. 40 years later, the 1975 World Series matchup between the Red Sox and Reds is still considered one of the best ball classics ever, culminating in a Game 6 moment at Fenway Park that was one for the ages. With the Reds holding a 3-2 advantage over Boston, the game is a wild seesaw affair that saw many momentum shifts in the game. Red Sox center fielder Fred Lynn drops 3-run dong to put the Sox up 3-0 in the first inning, but the Big Red Machine storms back, and by the 8th inning, they hold a 6-3 advantage and look destined to win the series. In the bottom of the 8th, Reds reliever Pedro Boban gives up an infield single to Lynn that ricochets off his left leg, and then he walks Petrocelli to bring the tying run to the plate. Right-handed pitcher Raleigh Eastwood comes out in the bully to replace Boban, and he promptly strikes out Dwight Evans and retires Rick Burleson with a line out to left. Bernie his number is called in a pinch hit duty for relief pitcher Roger Murray. At first glance, Carbo appears to be overmatched against Eastwick, missing late and fouling on fastballs in on the hand. With a 2-2 count, Carbo hits a shot for a second pinch hit home run in the Classic, tying the game at 6-6. In the bottom of the 9th, the Red Sox appears poised to win the game. Denny Doyle walks on 4 pitches, advancing to third on a sharp single by Gaz. Will McEnany becomes the 7th Reds pitcher when he replaces Eastwood, and he walks Fisk intentionally, leaving the bases drunk with Fred Lynn at the plate. Lynn flies out to Reds left fielder George Foster in foul territory, and Red Sox third base coach Don Zimmer tells Doyle on third base, no, but Denny, through the Fenway frenzy, hears go, and George Foster unleashes a perfect one hop strike into the glove of Reds catcher Johnny Bench, who does a sweep tag to Nick Doyle before he touches the plate. With runners on first and third, McEnany retires Petrocelli on a ground ball to wiggle off the hook, and the game's still tied at 6. In the top of the 11th, the hit king, Pete Rose, leads off the inning, and before he steps in the box, he's taking in the moment and the stage, and he's talking to Fisk, saying, man, this is an awesome game. I think it's the best game I've ever played in. This is what baseball's all about. Don't you agree, Pudge? Is this the best or what? And it was a moment of brevity, as for a brief second, Fisk wasn't sure how to answer the question coming from a player he's intent on destroying. He quickly turns the switch back on as Red Sox pitcher Dick Drago throws a pitch that grazes Charlie Hustle's shirt, putting him on first. The next batter, Ken Griffey Sr., attempts a badly executed bunt that bounds out in front of the plate. Pudge quickly pounces on the bunt, fires the seed to second base to get a headfirst sliding Pete Rose. Next batter, Joe Morgan, and his flapping chicken wing launches a ball deep down the left field line at Fenway Park. Dewey Evans is Johnny on the spot. He closes the gap on the fly ball and makes a leaping catch near the visitor's bullpen in deep right. Not only does he rob Morgan of extra bases, he also has the presence of mind to spin and fire the ball back to the infield to double up Griffey, who was running on contact. In the 12th inning, the top of the 12th, Red Sox right-hander gets a first and second gets out of first and second jam when he strikes out Cesar Geronimo with a backwards K, setting the stage for the fateful bottom half of the 12th inning that will forever go down in baseball lore. Fisk finds himself on deck, ready to lead off the inning with Fred Lynn behind him, and he turns to Lynn and he says, "Freddie, be ready. I feel something good right now. I'm going to smack a double off the monster, and it's going to be up to you to drive me in." At 12:33 a.m. Eastern Time, when Fisk dished into the box to face Pat Dorsey, who had retired 6 batters in a row before Pudge digs in, on a 1-0 count, Pudge launches a fastball center cut down the left field line, and for a brief second, the stadium goes quiet as all eyes are watching the flight of the ball that appears to be twisting foul, but the ball yard would soon explode in a celebration that could be heard throughout New England as the ball bounces off the foul pole well above the Green Monster for a walk-off dramatic home run. NBC Sports was covering the World Series, and millions of viewers across the country watched events unfold, and the moment would forever change the way sports was filmed. In a scene that gets replayed almost every October since, viewers saw Fisk hit the pitch and observed the flight of the blast from home plate. And as he's watching the blast, he begins to frenetically waving his hands, trying to will the ball from going foul. And after the ball bangs on the pole, he leaps into the air, living the dream of any kid who has ever played the game and dreamed of hitting a walk-off game winner and the World Series. All the while, the camera stayed focused on Fisk, becoming the first reaction shot in sports television history. Now, before this time, the cameraman would have simply followed the flight of the ball to its moment of its final defining conclusion. But for the first time in sports television, we were able to live the moment with the athlete on a more intimate level. The filming of the moment was totally accidental, and it has a great backstory. Here it goes. NBC producer Harry Croyle tells the cameraman to go out and post up in the hand-operated scoreboard in Fenway Park. Now, usually Fisk would have hit the blast and the camera would have just followed the ball, but on this night, a rodent would change how sports are shot. When Fisk is at the plate, a Fenway Park rat has joined the television crew inside the monster, and he's walking along the girders above the cameraman. When Fisk hits the ball, the cameraman doesn't dare follow the flooded ball because he assumes the sudden jerking of the camera will startle the rodent and will cause him to fall in his lap. Instead, he keeps his camera focused on the home plate and catches Fisk in his iconic moment. He sends the shot to the production booth, and the TV producers knew they had television gold. They released the shot to the public, and the rest is history. And with that, one of the most iconic sports moments ever caught on film was all because of a rat that lives in Fenway Park. As Fisk rounds the bases in triumph, John Kiley, the Fenway organist, starts banging out Handel's Hallelujah Chorus on the keys as the home run tossed off a regional celebration. In the early morning stillness of Charlestown, New Hampshire, childhood friend Dave Conant rang the bells of St. Luke's Episcopal Church, the Fisk family church, to celebrate the achievement of Charlestown's native son. Unfortunately, the euphoria would end in Game 7 as Spaceman is unable to hold on to an early 3-0 lead, losing to the Reds in Game 7 4-3, denying the Red Sox once again with their first championship win since 1918. Fisk would be named to 7 All-Star games during his tenure in Boston, and determining Fisk's value to the Red Sox. In 1980, Boston was 68-44 in games when Pudge was behind the plate, and 15-33 when he wasn't in the lineup. Yet by 1981, Fisk begins to question whether the team still wants him. Contract negotiations proceeded slowly, and the GM, Haywood Sullivan, blundered by failing to mail his contract in to league offices in time, rendering Fisk as a free agent. Despite the stellar years in Boston, including the 1980 season where he hits .289 in 131 games, Fisk is beginning to get the sense that Red Sox management considers him expendable. For Fisk, the soured contract talks seemed like more evidence that the Red Sox management committing to winning was wavering. The Sox traded Burleson and Butch Hobson to the California Angels in December. Fred Lynn followed in January, and the team was lowballing Fisk in contract negotiations. Regarding contract renewals and negotiations, Fisk had a simple, straightforward approach. He had performed for Boston, performed well, so why should contract negotiations be so tempestuous in a battle of wills? For the first time in his life, he felt estranged from his hometown team. So, I tell you what, C-Meds, with the curtain drawing on a playing career in Boston, this is where I'm going to step out for praise before embarking on the next chapter in Pudge's baseball career with the Chicago White Sox. I'm going to pull my candy apple red Ferrari into the paddock, switch out this batch of medium compound Pirelli tires for a set of softs, heading out to the grid and racing for the checkered flag. When I return, we'll pick up this story right where I left off as we head into the 1981 season, where Fisk leaves Fenway Park and the city of Boston for his new digs at Comiskey Park in South Chicago, wearing White Sox gear. I'm going to hook my boy Gunner up with some treats for a great first segment ode. Hydrate, formulate a story arc for Acts 2 and 3 in the Carlton Fisk baseball journey. Let me dip out, pay some bills, BRB, you freaks. Meet me on the dark side of the moon.
I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
Jackie Robinson punching home run into the left field stand.
Here comes Roger Maris. There's a new home run champion of all time. I don't believe what I just saw. Calvin Jr. has reached the unreachable star.
This crowd on its feet and in unison.
This one has a chance. Home run! The Boston Red Sox are champions.
Welcome to the first night of MLB Network.
Number 600 for Jim Thome. That ball is gone.
106. That would be a new record.
It is hard. Oh, what a catch by Mike Trout. The Cubs have finally won it all. The Atlanta Braves are world champions. White Sox ahead.
They're going to give us a run on a ground ball, except probably the third.
Yeah, the infield's playing back. Carlton Fisk facing Bob Stanley. Hey, here it goes! Get on back! Please, it is! Holy Holy cow! Carlton Fisk has put the White Sox ahead. A line drive. I was afraid it might not get up high enough. And the White Sox lead. Look at Fisk. Look at Fisk. Holy cow! He hit a low break. Look at the White Sox dugout. Woo! Hey! Oh, look at Eddie Einhorn. That's what we Charlie Lupin almost jumped out on the field. Einhorn said that's what we bought him for. Whoa!
Howdy, y'all. This is Big Tex Gage Geena, executive producer of Backwards K-Pod. In Texas, we do everything big. After football and golf, there's probably nothing I love more than going fishing and enjoying a good crawfish boil. The only thing I dislike about going fishing is the lingering odor it can leave on your hands afterwards. Well, the Fish and Hand Cleaner is an all-natural liquid soap perfect for overpowering fish and bait odors from your hands. I can't tell you how many times I've eaten steamed crabs, lobster, shrimp, crawfish, and then washed my hands with regular soap, only to touch my eyes half hour later, and my face begins to melt off due to the damn Cajun Old Bay spices. Well, we also have a hand cleaner, specifically formulated to use after eating shellfish and other seafoods. Perfect for cleaning spicy, smelly hands after a Texas-sized seafood feast. In these cases, don't settle for anything less than our crawfish hand cleaner, our crab hand cleaner, or the fishing hand cleaner. An ingenious trifecta of natural hand soaps developed and owned by a disabled Navy veteran. He and Jake have a true connection, as they were boot camp shipmates all the way back in 1989. So he is family, folks, and one thing we do here at the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network is look out for family. So you can support two grassroots companies by two former shipmate Navy vets. Crushing big bowls of shellfish or fishing on the banks of your favorite river while you listen to BKP. Sounds like a great day. You know, in fact, hey Mom, where are my poles? I'm gone fishing. There's also a buffalo wing hand cleaner in development as we speak. To check all of the incredible products of this great company, you can go to www.crawfishhandcleaner.com or call the home offices at 713-588-0290. That's 713-588-0290 to support the grassroots company that supports your grassroots podcast show. That's crawfishhandcleaner.com or 713-588-0290 to prepare for your summertime shellfish feast or that fishing trip you're planning. crawfishhandcleaner.com.
Strikes the count to Fisk. You can open the roof for $7. That's not high. The roof is, but the price isn't. That ball might drop it. Might drop. It does. Brings up back. He is the oldest man to ever get a hit in an All-Star game. Carlton Fisk. Nice call, Pudge. Good for you.
Okay, nerds. I'm Jake Robinson. Welcome back into Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network. And this is Backwards K-Pod, where we collect ball players and their stories. Now, before I broke up with spots, I was giving you a detailed profile study on the legendary Carlton Fisk. And from his early beginnings as a strapping young farm boy in Charlestown, New Hampshire, to becoming a New England institution as a hero for his hometown Boston Red Sox. After getting drafted by the Sox in the first round, 4th overall in 1967 MLB amateur draft, Fisk works his way up the ranks as an unpolished gem with a fighting competitive spirit and a high glass ceiling just waiting for him to crash through. After a couple short stints as a September call-up, Pudge would break the 1972 spring training as a third catcher on the Red Sox depth chart. And after their starting catcher gets injured in the third game of the season, Fisk would be given his chance as a starter, and he takes advantage of the opportunity, finishing the year with a Gold Glove Award, 4th in AL MVP voting, and unanimous Rookie of the Year. Pudge was tougher than nails, attacking every game like a pugnacious brawler. In 1974, he shreds the ligaments in his left leg, and there are whispers throughout the league that the promising former Rookie of the Year would never catch again. But Pudge has no doubts he will return and be better than ever. He misses the first 2.5 months of the 1975 season before returning to the team and slashing .331, .395, .529 to lead the resurgent Red Sox back into the World Series to face the Big Red Machine of Cincinnati. The series is an instant classic that Boston would lose in Game 7, but Fisk would deliver an incredible moment in Game 6 of the series that will live in baseball lore when he does what every young baseball kid dreams about by hitting a home run walk-off dinger in a World Series game. As the 1970s draw to a close, Fisk had accumulated 11 years of stunning service for his hometown team, recording 162 home runs, 568 RBIs, 1,856 total bases. He had made 7 All-Star teams, earned Rookie of the Year honors, and established himself as a hometown hero and face of the Boston Red Sox. But beginning March 18th, 1981, Comiskey Park, not Fenway, would be his new home park when he signs a 5-year, $3 million contract to play for the Chicago White Sox. Red Sox GM Haywood Sullivan, after having a contentious negotiation with the star catcher, he makes a clerical error when he makes a contract offer on December 22nd instead of by the December 20th deadline. Because of the Red Sox tardy overtures, Fisk feels like he should be free to test the open market. The dispute between the Red Sox and the Players Union goes before Raymond Getz, an arbitrator who rules in favor of Pudge. Fisk wasn't the only player to leave Boston that offseason, as Fred Lynn, Bud Thompson, and Rick Burleson were all dealt to the Angels, as the foundation of the 1975 pennant-winning club was slowly but surely deteriorating. So, here's the now 32-year-old Fisk at his new training facility in Sarasota, Florida, his White Sox jersey brandishing the new number 72 instead of the iconic 27 he had worn in B-Town, and a move he would explain later. 1972 was my rookie year in Boston, and the year my son was born, and I considered my move to Chicago as a turnaround, as I was hopeful my rookie year with the White Sox would be a turning point in my career. Thus, I went from 27 to 72. New owners Eddie Einhorn and Jerry Reinsdorf were hoping to make a big splash to turn the sinking ship of a franchise around. In addition to Fisk, the new White Sox owners opened the coffers to their war chest and invested in outfielders Ron LaFleur and Greg Lazinski, as well as second baseman Tony Bernazard. Fisk would miss a portion of spring training, nursing his sore knees, but the trusty veteran was ready to go when the season dawned. Game 1 of the 1981 season, it had the White Sox ironically visiting Fenway Park in the opener of all places. And Fisk can now admit to being nervous returning home after such a contentious divorce in the offseason. And he didn't really care if he was getting a negative response. Because as the Type A proud warrior remembers, it didn't matter. I was on the opposite team now, and I was there to do a job and beat the Red Sox. Although he heard a few derisive tears emanating from the stands of Fenway that day, those protests from disgruntled fans were swallowed up by the loud cheers for the native son. The The starting pitchers for the opener that day was Britt Burns for the White Sox and Dennis Eckersley from Boston. Burns was a southpaw out of Houston, Texas, who was named the Sporting News Rookie Pitcher of the Year in 1980, leading all White Sox pitchers with a 15-13 record and a 2.84 ERA. By contrast, Eckersley was a wily veteran pitcher who led the Red Sox in wins 3 years in a row after coming over from Cleveland and a trade in 1978. However, 1980 wasn't his best years as he went 12-14 with a 4.28 ERA. The game is shaping up to be a pitcher's duel as both hurlers post zeros across the scoreboards until the Red Sox bottom half of the fifth. Burns leaves too much of a fastball center cut, and Dewey Evans smashes a dinger over the monster, and on cue, the Red Sox fans, they began flinging a multitude of frisbee onto the field from the outfield bleachers, which temporarily halts the game while groundskeepers remove the disc from the playing field. With 1 out in the 7th, the Red Sox new starting catcher, Gary Allison's, drops dong all over Britt Burns' lips. After walking 2 more batters after the blast, Burns is relieved in favor of Lamar Hoyt, who quickly strikes out Joe Rudy for the 3rd out. In the top of the 8th, White Sox manager Tony La Russa digs into his bag of tricks, and he pinch hits Bob Molinaro for shortstop Bill Allman. The strategy, it pays off as Molinaro works Eck for a walk. LaFleur follows that up with a single to center to put White Sox on first and second with no outs. Red Sox manager Ralph Houk opts to go to his bully and replaces Eckersley with Bob Stanley. Next batter, Mike Squires, lays down a sacrifice bunt to advance LaFleur and Molinaro to second and third with 1 out, setting the stage for Fisk in his return to his old stomping grounds. And for once in his career, Carlton is not slow and deliberate in his actions. He takes the first pitch he sees from his former battery mate, and he blasts it over the monster and out onto Lansdowne Street. And in recollection of the moment, Fisk knew in the back of his mind that Stanley had a hell of a sinker. So Pudge's thought process stepping into the box that day was to looking for something down and out over the plate. And when I first connected with it, I thought it was going to smack off the monster. I thought it would be a double. Red Sox Nation couldn't help but rise to their feet to acknowledge the greatness of their native son, now sporting socks of a different color. As a proud New Englander is rounding the bases with his customary hands-down trot and his head held high and stiff elbows and a customary run that opponents may have conceived as arrogance, but his teammates, they understood that his home run trot was simply a manifestation of Pudge's inner pride and his respect for the essence of the game. One guy watching the action unfold that day in the center field bleachers area was comedian Dennis Leary, who can't believe the stunning spectacle that was Fisk in the clutch. After the game, he sees Carlton giving post-game interviews wearing a t-shirt that reads, "Haywood Sullivan sucks," which Leary found profound and sadly comical, endearing an even greater love and bond with the former Red Sox star. The Chi Sox would tackle on 2 more runs in the top of the 9th to take a 5-2 lead. The Sox would score an unearned run in the bottom half, but it was all they could muster in the 5-3 defeat. Lamar Hoyt was credited with the win and relief, and Ed Farmer picks up the save after getting Joe Rudy to fly out for the final play of the emotional game with 2 runners on. And Bob Stanley is staked with the loss. The 1981 season is interrupted by a players' strike, forcing the cancellation of 38% of the scheduled games that year. The season will be split into 2 halves, but the White Sox and the new stripped-down Red Sox, for that matter, don't make the playoffs. Fisk would finish the year in his first year in the Shy with a .263 batting average in 96 games, 7 home runs, and 45 RBIs. In 1982, the White Sox had shredded their losing culture and image, and Tony La Russa has guided the franchise back to a level of respectability. The Southsiders finished with an 87-75 record for a third-place finish in the American League West, a mere 6 games of the pace set by the California Angels. The offensive firepower is led by 23-year-old Harold Baines and the Bull, Greg Luzinski, as well as Fisk, who finished off the year with 3.3 WAR, playing in 133 games, launching 14 home runs in the expansive Comiskey Park and driving in 65. By 1983, White Sox GM Roland Heeman and manager of the year Tony La Russa have assembled a team of hungry dogs on the hunt, as the team finishes first in the American League West with a 99-63 record, and many team insiders credit Fisk's work with pitchers Lamar Hoyt, Britt Burns, Floyd Bannister, and Richard Dawson as the key to Chicago's turnaround. Hoyt would win the American League Cy Young Award in 1983, leading the junior circuit with 24 dubs and a 1.02 whip. The 24-year-old Dodson would finish 4th in the league voting for Cy Young Award with a 5.1 WAR and a 22-7 win-loss record, a 3.23 ERA, and a 1.30 ERA+. The 28-year-old Southpaw Floyd Bannister finished 2nd in the American League in strikeouts with 193 and 217 innings pitched. The White Sox offense was spearheaded by a 4-headed monster consisting of Fisk, Baines, Luzinski, and the super scintillating 25-year-old diaper dandy 1983 American League Rookie of the Year, Ron Kittle, who takes over the baseball universe, smashing 35 big flies while driving in 100 runs, setting a franchise mark for home runs hit by a rookie. The team surges to a winning streak around the All-Star break, and Texas Rangers manager Doug Radar says the White Sox, they're really not playing well. They're just winning ugly. And the critique lit a fire under Chicago's ass, and they used Radar's quote as a rally cry for the team to gravitate as a unit. To this day, the 1983 White Sox are often referred to as the winning ugly team, and their striped futuristic uniforms as the winning ugly uniforms. But a win is a win, and they don't all have to be Rembrandts. The Shy Sox blitzkrieg the competition, winning the West by 20 games over the second-place Royals, making their first playoff appearance in the postseason since the Go-Go Sox of 1959, who lost to the Los Angeles Dodgers in the Fall Classic. The White Sox find themselves favored in many circles in their ALC matchup versus the Baltimore Orioles. On October 5th, 1983, Game 1 of the ALCS goes down at Memorial Stadium, and Lamar does what Lamar does in 1983. He shuts down the Orioles with a complete game 2-1 victory, surrendering one run on 5 hits and striking out 4. The Birds, who are still smarting over losing the AL East in 1982 on the very last day of the regular season to the Brewers, they don't flinch, and they choke out the Pale Hosers in the next 3 games by a combined score of 18-1 to advance to the World Series, where they will beat the Philadelphia Phillies for the chip. It would mark the last time Pudge would appear on the postseason stage, and his play was less than inspiring, collecting only 3 hits in 18 plate appearances with a walk, good enough for a mediocre 1983 ALCS slash line of 176, 222, 235, as the White Sox bats turned to ice in the face of Orioles pitchers. In 1984, the White Sox take a step back. As a team, they finished in 5th place with a 74-88 record. Pudge is hampered by injuries all year. He only plays in 102 games, and he still manages to smack 21 home runs out of the year. In 1985, the White Sox rebound with the 85-77 record, good enough for third place, finished the AL West 6 games behind the Kansas City Royals. Pudge sees a resurgence in his play and finishes with 37 home runs, the most on the team while driving at 107. He earns a Silver Slug Award as the most offensively productive catcher in the American League, his second in a White Sox uniform, and is invited to his 10th All-Star game and his third in 5 years playing for the White Sox. But in 1995, that would be the year that the honeymoon with the White Sox, it just basically goes down in flames, just like in Boston. He and the White Sox franchise, they become embroiled in bitter salary disputes, subsequent resignings with the club in 1986, 1988, 91, and 93 had the civility akin to the Hatfields and McCoy feuds as both sides attempted to assert their positions of power in negotiations. At a time when the average former player are collecting well-earned pension checks and making special appearances at card shows, fantasy camps, or old-timer all-star games, Fisk continues on with his quest to set personal goals. In August of 1990, at the age of 42, he smashes his 328th career home run to set the bar for dingers at his demanding position. His son Casey was there waiting for his father, proudly at home plate, to celebrate the historic moment with his father. White Sox manager Jeff Torborg recalls how the hair stood up on his arms and goosebumps appeared all over his body as he watched the intense ball player let down his guard and hug his son after crossing the plate. 1991 sees the 43-year-old catcher have the last monster season of his career with a .299, .413, .712 slash line, 18 home runs, 74 RBIs in 134 games, earning his 11th and final All-Star selection, a game in which he becomes the oldest major leaguer to collect a hit in the Fall Classic. The White Sox as a team followed their leader's lead, and they finished in second place in the AL West, 8 games behind the first place Minnesota Twins with the 87 and 75 record. In 1993, Fisk catches his 2,226th game of his illustrious career, surpassing the mark set by Bob Boone as the all-time leader of games played at the catcher's position. Then, on June 28th, the White Sox quietly released the legend. The next day, Carlton and his wife Linda, they sent a simple but heartfelt message to Red Sox Nation when they hired a plane to circle the Boston Commonwealth with a banner in tow that read, "It all started here. Thank you, Boston fans. Pudge Fisk." And they also sent similar messages across the skies over Comiskey Park as well. Now, the years have come and gone since Fisk last took command of a baseball team on a Major League Diamond in 1993, but many specific memories of his greatness refuse to fade in the psyche of teammates who had the honor to watch his arrogant grace. Such as the unassisted double play he pulled off at the plate of Yankee Stadium in August of 1985, Fisk taking a relay throw from Isaac Guillen, tags out the barreling Bobby Meacham, and then spins and tags Darryl Berra after a minor collision at the plate, sending both players sprawling to the dirt. It was literally a bang-bang unassisted double play, and it preserved a 3-3 tie with the Bombers, a game in which the White Sox would eventually win in extra innings. Frequently, due to his pediatric pace of play, Fisk would absorb criticism throughout the years. With his methodical and deliberate pace, he would be a constant time clock offender in today's game. Fisk was known as a vendor's best friend. After his exile in 1981, the biggest complainers about his absence were actually the Fenway concessionaires, as several of them complained that a Fisk-less Red Sox were playing home games on an average 20 minutes faster, and the new brevity was costing them loot in their pockets. At the time of his retirement, Carlton Fisk ranked first in total games caught at-bats, runs scored, doubles, home runs, and putouts, third in RBIs, fourth in fielding percentage. Carlton's 128 stolen bases are the second most to former White Sox backstop Ray Schalk in his 176. The White Sox officially retired his number 72 in 1997. That same year, he is elected to the Red Sox Hall of Fame. Pudge's election into the National Baseball Hall of Fame was almost a foregone conclusion, but he became official when he's inducted in 2000. After some delay and introspective thought, Fisk decides he's going to go into the Hall with his plaque sporting the Big B Red Sox hat, even though he spent 13 years playing in Chicago as opposed to his 9 seasons spent in B-Town. After the decision was made, he tells beat writers that the Red Sox hat has always been his favorite lid, and he will probably wear it for the remainder of his life as the prodigal son returns to Boston to take a gig with the team as a special assistant. At the very same press conference, Red Sox GM Dan Duquette tells a surprised Pudge that the organization has decided to retire his number 27 for posterity. The shocked Fisk felt a cold chill run up his spine, thinking this wasn't even possible. The Red Sox had a stringent set of rules that limited retiring players' numbers. They would only retire a number if the player made the Hall of Fame, spent at least 10 years playing in Boston, and he has to finish his career with the Red Sox. And Duquette, by hiring Pudge, ostensibly ensured that he would finish a career in the Red Sox organization. In a formal 2005 ceremony, the left field foul pole that his Game 6 home run banked off of the 1975 game winner was officially named the Carlton Fisk pole. So, you got the pesky pole in right and the Fisk pole in left. Fisk is a proud warrior who attained a high level of success coming from a small town with a population barely over 1,000 and a high school graduation class that only had 43 people in it, not to mention he played less than 100 games as an amateur. After being hired by Duquette in 1997, Fisk remained a Red Sox employee doing promotional and marketing work for the team. He was an outstanding ambassador for the Red Sox, but aside from his amazing career that spans 2 major markets in Boston and Chicago, it's the personal achievements that Carlton holds dear to his heart. To have an amazing wife and great kids who still call him dad, who kiss him when he's coming and kiss him when he's going, that's the fuel that now fills the void in his life. Though Pudge will always be remembered for his dramatic Game 6 home run in the 1975 World Series, there is one more on-the-field moment that still resonates with me and perfectly defines his intense nature and his moral compass between right and wrong when it comes to playing against baseball. In 1990, Yankees rookie Deion Sanders fails to run out an infield pop-up early in the game, and Pudge is biting his lip under the mask as he has no tolerance for players who don't hustle. The next time at bat, Deion approaches a dish. He draws his customary dollar sign in his batter's box with the barrel of his bat, and Pudge has seen enough. He stands up from his crouch, and he keeps his mask on. He doesn't want to show Deion up. But he addresses the dual sports athlete, and he tells Sanders, hey, there's a right way and a wrong way to play this game. And if you run out plays when I'm playing you, then I just as soon kick your ass right here at home plate of Yankee Stadium. Even though Sanders played for the Yankees, a team he absolutely loathed, Fisk felt like he had to set the rookie straight. Prime time had violated the Fisk baseball code of ethics. Thou shalt hustle and run out every play with life or death abandon. To Fisk, playing the game the right way was just as important as winning. That meant playing with passion, preparation, hard work, integrity, and respect for the players that laid the path for you. And it was constantly trying to inspire others to do the same. These were the traditional New England values instilled in him by his parents, and it was the source of Carlton's motivation and the basis for his longevity and exceptional accomplishments. He would acquire this moral base on his family farm in New Hampshire, and they would propel him to a legendary career that would end in Cooperstown, New York, in the house of the Immortals. And with that, I think this is where I'm going to wrap it up. Another body dropped into our collection of ball players by Jake the Ripper of Pudge. But unlike most other psychopathic serial killers, I leave a detailed map where to find my victims, and that's in that banging-ass catalog of archive shows on this channel. Before I shut it down for another week, let's take one last look at those, so impressive stats and accolades the great Carlton Fisk left behind on his Hall of Fame resume. Carlton Ernest Fisk, a.k.a. the Commander, a.k.a. Pudge. Born December 26, 1947 in Bellows Falls, Vermont. Attended Charlestown High School in Charlestown, New Hampshire. Drafted by the Boston Red Sox in the fourth round, 4th overall in the 1967 January draft out of the University of New Hampshire. On September 18, 1969, Carlton Fisk becomes the 12,935th man in the history of the planet Earth to become a member of the MLB fraternity when he makes his big league debut against the Baltimore Orioles and goes 0-4. 24-year Major League career with the Red Sox and Chicago White Sox. 68.4 career WAR, the second highest WAR for a catcher, behind only Ivan Rodriguez. 2,499 games played, 2,226 as a catcher, again, second only to Ivan Rodriguez. 9,853 plate appearances, 1,276 runs, 2,356 hits, 421 doubles, 47 triples, 376 home runs, 1,330 RBIs, 128 stolen bases, 58 times called, 1,388 strikeouts to 849 walks, 3,999 total bases, the 91st most in the history of the game. A 269, 341, 457 slash line, a 797 OPS, and a 117 OPS plus. 1972 unanimous American League Rookie of the Year, 1972 Gold Glove winner, 11-time All-Star, the oldest player to get a hit in the Midsummer Classic when he hit a dying quail to center field, and the 1990 All-Star Game in the Sky Dome at the age of 43. 3-time Silver Slugger Award, 5-time American League Player of the Week. In 2000, Pudge earned 79.6% of votes from the Baseball Writers of America to earn admission into the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York, his first year of eligibility. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, seamen of all ages, this has been the story of Pudge, Carlton Fisk. And I will never charge you freaks for the baseball content offered up here at Backwards K Pod. No Patreon, no Twitch, no pay-to-play bonus subscriptions. Thank you so much for tuning in and entrusting me to be the gatekeeper for this beautiful game's rich history. I'll be up bright and early tomorrow morning, putting in at work with an intense bullpen session, chomping at the bit to climb the hill for my next start. And I promise, nerds, I'll try to be better next week. I'm going to keep my head down, develop my craft, and come through every week with that free baseball smoke.
You don't want that smoke.
As my boy Gunner has us feverishly racing up the tracks to get you back to your loved ones, patiently awaiting your turn at Terrapin Station. I can see the Carlton Fisk bio and our rearview mirror getting smaller and smaller. So with that in mind, it's time to look forward. So I turn my attention to I Never Say Die baseball hydra. I reach under my kimono, grab my katana blade, and I chop the head off that beast, only to see 2 more baseball topics appear in its place. Next week, this train rolls on to the land of 10,000 lakes, where we will unpack the history of baseball in the state of Minnesota. It's a vibrant history that goes much further back than 1961, when the Minnesota Twins set up shop. We'll also explore the historical backstory of the 3 major league stadiums that have dominated the baseball landscape of the state. First, Metropolitan Stadium in Bloomington, Minnesota, and then the Hubert Humphrey Dome and today's Cathedral Target Field in Minneapolis, St. Paul. All this and more on the history of baseball in Minnesota. But y'all know the deal. That's another story for another pod here at Backwards K Pod, where we collect ball players and their stories. Check me out on YouTube and TikTok on the Backwards K Pod channels. Email the show backwardskpod@gmail.com. Our handle on the site, formerly known as Twitter, is at back_K_podcast. Or you can always find me chilling on the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network private group Facebook page. Share the show with your CMET buddies. Leave a rating review of my performance on any platform that offers you that ability. I ain't scared. I do what I do when I do it, and no one does it better. Thank y'all for coming out. God bless, and win the day. Me and my boy Charlie Guns, we throwing our Gunnar Hendersons high in the sky, y'all. That's our number 2s, as in peace. We got the history of baseball in Minnesota on deck. Sounds fun. I'm channeling my inner Bart Scott when I say, can't wait.